Thank you, Jansen. And I also like to thank the board of directors and the staff of GLAD. And most importantly, I want to thank all of the volunteers that support GLAD day in and day out. I also want to thank all of you for supporting the important work that GLAD does. It is a critical work, and I know that that work cannot be done without your support. It's always good to be back in Boston. I've been coming to Boston for some 30-plus years. It's always fun to be in the city. It's always good to be in the company of my Bristers, particularly Gary Daffin and Councilman Ken Reeves, who I've known forever. And I want to thank you all for loaning us Doug Brooks. I had the privilege of actually talking with Doug earlier today, and the remarkable work he did in President Obama's White House and that he continues to do. And I feel like that whenever I come to Boston, I feel like I'm channeling Belinda Dunn and Michael Richmond. But before I say anything else, this has been a really, really busy time. Jansen called and told me about this award early in the spring, which was smart, because we don't say yes to things anytime after July, okay? And so as I began to look at the calendar, I thought, you must be out of your mind. Now, how are you going to do all of these things that are scheduled in the next few weeks, and it being 11 days before the election? But I'm glad to be here because GLAD is such an important organization. Now, I have been living with HIV, as Jensen said, for 35 years. I have lived my entire adult life with HIV. I've lived so long that I don't remember what it was like to not live with HIV. I am alive today because I have the love and support of family and friends. I am alive today because I have access to care and treatment that people with HIV need and deserve. I am alive today because in the dark days of the epidemic, GLAD stood up for us. And I am glad that GLAD is still standing up for us and making sure that we don't go back to those dark days. But I'm also always weirded out when people want to hold up my work as being special or extraordinary, because I don't exactly experience it that way. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am thrilled that the amazing work that my team at the Black AIDS Institute does gets recognition. And I'm familiar with the notion that if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, does it make a sound? So I get that. But for me personally, I'm a black gay man living in America. I am a father. I am a grandfather now. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm an uncle. And my communities are under attack. What I do is what I'm supposed to do. And our communities have been under attack for a long time. Black communities have been under attack for a long time. And it didn't just start when white folks discovered that police were killing unarmed black men. It didn't start then either. something that we have understood in our communities for a long time. You know, I am arguably a very privileged person. Now, I went to one of the best universities in the country. I'm a Wesleyan alumni. I live in a relatively affluent neighborhood in Los Angeles. I was a special assistant to the mayor of Los Angeles. I have worked with presidents and leaders around the globe. You know, in my house, I have photographs of me with no less than 4 presidents of the United States. And yet, when I'm driving my car and a police car pulls up behind me, I get nervous. There's something wrong with that. You know, Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. When we know better, we do better. You know, if America was a character in a movie, it would be Michael Corleone in The Godfather 3. You know that scene when he's trying to become legitimate and then the mob comes back in Las Vegas and he says, every time I'm trying to claw myself out, they just pull me back. Well, you know, that's kind of like race in America. You know, every time we think we're going to get to a post-racial state, we just get pulled back. And we have to fight through. When we know better, we do better. The question is, what do we have to know? And what does better look like? So as Jansen said, I have been working in HIV for over 30 years now. The bulk of my work has been in the HIV space. Now, and no one can deny that we've made some tremendous progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS in this country. It appears that we have the tools today to offer the promise of ending the AIDS epidemic. We have new diagnostic tools. Today, it has never been easier or simpler or faster or cheaper to know your HIV status. Today, you can get an HIV test almost anywhere at any time. No more blood, an oral swab. You can get the results back in a second. You can take an HIV test in the privacy of your own home. So it's free and easy and fast and simple and painless, and you get information that might save your life. What's not to love about that? We have better surveillance tools. We can identify the hot spots of the epidemic down to the census tract or zip code. You know, there's a story about this guy who loses his keys. And he's searching and he's searching and he's searching for his keys. And another guy comes up and he says, "What's going on? What are you doing? Can I help you?" And the first guy says, "Well, I lost my keys." And the second guy says, "Well, where were you the last time you saw your keys?" And the first guy says, "About a mile down the road." And the second guy scratches his head and he says, "Why are you looking here?" And the first guy says, "Because the light's better." Well, now we have surveillance tools that we can move the light. We can move the light to where the problem is. We have better treatment tools. Now, tools that are less toxic. Now, tools that actually work. Simpler tools. You can take 1 pill a day. Now, I'm a testament of that. You know, there are other people in this room who are a testament of that. That treatment works. We have better prevention tools. Today, we can interrupt transmission of the virus. If we can help people living with HIV get to viral suppression, we can eliminate HIV transmission. And we can eliminate acquisition. 1 pill a day. And taken as prescribed, we can eliminate the ability to be infected with HIV. Now, 5 years ago, if someone were to say to anyone in this room, if you could take one pill a day and you could eliminate your risk for HIV infection, would you do it? Everybody would have said, absolutely, this is a great idea. So will someone explain to me, now that we have one pill a day that actually you can interrupt acquisition, why is that a controversial subject? The Affordable Care Act affords us the promise that we even have access to care and treatment. But here's the rub. Now, that even with the promise of ending the AIDS epidemic, and what I understand, just because we can do something, we should not get it confused with having done it. We still have lots of work to do. So there's three things that I'm mindful of when I think about all of these possibilities. Number one, even though we might have the tools to end the AIDS epidemic, let's not get it twisted. We haven't done it yet. And we particularly haven't done it in Black and brown and poor communities and among women and among trans people. And understand this, some pills that work for some folks some of the time does not a cure makes. We made a promise. This community made a promise to be in the fight until it's over. And it ain't over yet. Number two, we still have some intractable foes and stigma and racism and homophobia and transphobia and gender inequity and poverty. These are barriers that hinder our ability to end the AIDS epidemic. And as Martin Luther King Jr. said, none of us are free unless all of us are free. None of us are at the end until all of us get to the end. And number three, if we do not converge awareness, understanding, access, and utilization of these new technologies, we could increase the already awful HIV/AIDS disparities that exist based on who you are, whom you love, or where you live. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. These tools are worthless unless they are used effectively, efficiently, and compassionately. There are large segments of our society that thinks the AIDS epidemic is over. And conversely, there are large segments of our society who are not aware that these tools are there or do not believe that they have the self-efficacy to manifest change and bring about the end of the AIDS epidemic. And as we move forward, it's important for us as a community to keep our promise, to understand that the AIDS epidemic begins one person at a time. It will end one person at a time, but we are inextricably connected to each other. And as we look at the demographics of the AIDS epidemic, an epidemic that 50% of the 1.25 million folks living with HIV today are Black. And yet 85% of folks on PrEP are white gay men. That's not good enough. We can and we must change all of that. And that's because that is who we are. That is who this community is. And think about it. What does a world without AIDS mean? What does an AIDS-free generation mean? It doesn't mean AIDS-free over here and not over there. Increasingly, the amplification of two Americas exists, where one is healthy, wealthy, and white, and the other is poor, still at risk, and people of color. That is not our America. But I tell you something that gives me hope, that makes me proud. If there is one thing that I am sure of, it is the power of the convergence of the wisdom, the heart, and courage in this room, and rooms like this, in this community, in our community, to forge a path that will finally get the job done. I know that each of you are committed as we are to get there. And I know, as I look around this room, that each of you have a pair of ruby red slippers that you can click together that will get us home. The day will come when this epidemic will be over. And when it does, it's important for them to know that we were not all monsters, that we were not all cowards. Some of us dared to care in the face of it. Some of us dared to love in spite of it. Some of us dared to fight because of it. Because it is in the caring and the loving and the fighting that we live forever. Thank you.